This is Black Focus, an open discussion where we talk everything politics, current events, and academic scholarship through the lenses of race, gender, and class. We intend to raise awareness on social justice issues pertinent to the intellectuals of our time and ask that you join us for this conversation. Hello, and welcome. I am your co-host, Kenya Harris.
And I'm your other host, She. And this is Black Focus, an open discussion
where we aim to educate the masses, address social justice issues, and liberate the exploited through resourcing. First, we want to talk about why we decided to start Black Focus. What is Black Focus exactly? Black Focus is a business. It is a community organization whose purpose is to reinvest into the community. So it takes a social entrepreneurial model that invests back into our community through the programs and production that we produce.
And these investments are dear to our heart, and so they come in various forms. So it might be supporting local Black businesses. It might be donating money to those in need, to help protesters, to help people that need the money and can also uplift not only Black people, but people of color, women, anybody that feels exploited. And also we started Black Focus to provide some content and substance to back valid claims of protest. So we went protesting. For us, when we got there, we thought there was a clear mission. We thought everybody was on the same page. But, moments later during the protest, that wasn't true. We saw a lot of people not knowing why they were there. And then the leaders, they had no demands. And so while we were there, I kind of zoned everything out and was just witnessing everything that was going on. And then in my head, I'm like, there's a lack of there's a lack of demands. And so why are we even here? And I knew I was there for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and for all of the people that have expressed emotions over these injustices that we have seen for the past few months. But I didn't see any clear demands or reasoning of why we were there. And so me and Kenya kept going into deep conversation about it. And we realized that we need an organization that was able to educate people on what protesting is and then address social issues and also to liberate, them through reinvesting in the local community.
I think it's important when you're protesting to be able to articulate why you're protesting and the reason for you being there. And although I think a lot of those organizations who have been spearheading a lot of the protests in our area have created demands of what they want to see done, I think that I just have a different vision for what could be done. And I think me and She have come to a consensus on what exactly we think would be the most effective way to get things done. And it looks a little bit different from a lot of the local organizations that are around us. So
just because we have one way that we think that we can have a contribution to the Black Lives Matter movement doesn't mean that other people's are invalid or aren't as good as ours, because we all have different experiences. We all have different upbringings. We all, have a different emotional reaction what is being done to our people. And so I think that the more the merrier. Use your gifts, use your talents in order to contribute to the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think that's what Black Focus is for Kenya and I. And though we do other things to help Black people, to help women, to help people of color, I think that having this open discussion, allowing people to play these podcasts around allies, around people who don't understand certain issues, this podcast will open a discussion. So you don't even have to lead the discussion. You can have two anonymous people that they probably don't know have a conversation so that it's a different perspective for them and that they can learn and that they don't feel like you're attacking their personal perspectives.
Yeah, now I want to talk about our journey for Black Focus. Just talk about what we expect to do here in the short term before the year is over and where we expect to be a year from now, just things like that. So for Black Focus, what I see us doing by the end of the year is really just being a source of information and education for people our age and being able to expose people to the different forms of academia that we've been privy to our whole undergraduate degree. And so we are going to bring on guest speakers that are very well versed in these areas that we're talking about. And we're going to have really tough discussions about really intense things. We're going to talk about anti-Blackness. We're going to talk about what white supremacy is, and not just what those things are, but what they look like institutionalized. So what does white supremacy look like in the education system? What does anti-Blackness look like in prison reform or law enforcement, things like that? So we're going to have a lot of discussions about that. We're going to have a lot of discussions about how a lot of movements in the past have historically been gendered and how we want to move away from that and be more inclusive of all people. We're going to talk about how the structuring that we had beforehand, even with the letter that we had produced and everything, how that itself was good, but we realized that we could do better and we can be more inclusive. And this is our push towards that, push towards inclusion, push towards more information towards the subjects that we're talking about, and making sure that everyone understands from the beginning. So once we move and we're doing social programming and we're doing all of these community investment things, that we're moving in a united form and that everyone is on the same page, same line, same word.
And I think also we want for Black focus right now, and I think it is meant to be an open discussion, and I can't say it enough. I don't want people to think that our perspectives are say all be all. I don't want people to think that we're always right, that we know what's going on. We can stand to be educated too. And that's why we want to bring in these guest speakers, because if we don't feel as though we can speak on it enough or have the best perspective that can educate you with facts, we're going to bring people on. And for me, I have a public health background. So what it looked for me for the Black movement or Black Lives Matter movement was, what are the health disparities in our population as far as Black people, as far as exploited people, as far as people of color? What does that look like? Are we disenfranchised by the system? And the clear answer is yes. Because of systematic racism, our healthcare system makes it to where people of color, African Americans, cannot get the best opportunities as our white counterparts. And so I thought that that was a big discussion, because health is wealth, and we're always taught that. And if we even look at even someone outside of that African American movement, let's look at Native Americans. Their average age is about 55 to live to lifespan. And so that's very odd when the national average is 78. And so these are issues that we want to highlight and talk about, because we just don't want to hear the voices of African Americans. We want to hear the voices of everyone. And so with these open discussions, we're also going to have, some like so-called fun topics, like talk about, like Judge Amy Barrett right now, and like what the confirmation is, and what it looked like, when certain people asked her questions versus someone else, and there's playful shade. There's obviously, political strategies that need to be, looked at. And I think that we can also examine those and learn from them and see what is really happening in front of our faces that some people just don't see. And so looking to the future for Black Focus, I think for us, I just want people to just be ready to be themselves. I want people to be in the car or at home and literally listen, and then also, pause it and see what you think about it. See, is this the same perspective do you have? Do you have something that you want to add? And I think that definitely respond to us, like comment on our page. Definitely go follow at This is Black Focus. Follow our page and make sure that you're engaged. I don't want it to just be she and Kenya. I want it to be she, Kenya, and whoever is listening. And I want it to be a healthy dialogue going on.
I think for me, as far as this movement has gone, I have seen a troubling reappearance of everyone trying to use the Black image to bolster their own branding. So yes, it's great and fabulous that we see Black Lives Matter everywhere and that all these businesses are endorsing the movement and they're talking about it. But let's hold them accountable and make sure that they're actually doing work to help the movement and they're not just saying, oh, Black Lives Matter, and they're not just using Black imagery, right? So I want us as BIPOC and the LGBTQ community to take control of our image and make sure we're standing on that as a platform. I don't want other people to be using our image for their own economic gain. And that has become a really huge issue for me, especially with my own institution. Now every advertisement for just about every club, every organization, and including the administration will have Black faces. And that's extremely misleading because you see all these Black faces and you're like, oh, like University of Alabama is so diverse. They've got it together. And they don't. I don't know how many issues, problems, and frustrations I have gone through just internally dealing with this institution and then trying to challenge the institution and being given the runaround by our own administration, right? So I want to make sure that we're getting the economic opportunities that we deserve and we're not just getting our image put out there. And so that's one of the big proponents of having this discussion for me, having this podcast and being able to make sure that my voice is heard and not just talking about like the things that I post or the articles that I write and things. This is an elaboration on what I believe to be the next steps in the movement.
I can definitely understand that whole Black imagery thing, at least for me, you know, being an athlete and also being part of the LGBTQ community. I was included in certain things just because of those two demographics, but my voice was
because you were a check. You're just a little check in the box.
And so it was like, yeah, it's cool that I'm on the poster. Yeah, it's cool that you're taking my picture, but you're only going to use it when you need to support, you know, an anti, like, oh, we can't be racist because we have this queer LGBTQ, Black person on this. But like every time I would bring up certain issues or concerns, it was, oh, well, I don't think that. Oh, well, I don't think that. And it's cool that they didn't think that, but I was telling them how I felt and I felt like a prop. And I think that people have to understand that it doesn't matter how you felt. It's about the people that are oppressed and how they feel.
And it's also about what the system is doing. So exactly. Even if that's not something that you necessarily agree with or something you don't think that you're perpetuating, just by even acting in that system that is perpetuating these feelings of the oppressed, right? You're still doing the same thing. Even if you don't feel it, you're still doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. So we need to stop talking about how, oh, I feel this or I feel that, and talk about what is actually being written. What are the actual provisions for the structuring of whatever entity you're in? That is what needs to change.
And I don't want to get too deep, but we also have to hold our fellow African American and people of color accountable that we also can't just play on our demographics for our personal gain and not check the system because we're gaining something, even though the majority of our people are still hurting and crying. So yes, it's fine that I got a scholarship because I'm African American and LGBTQ, but like, there's still plenty of African Americans and people of color who aren't getting the opportunity to go to college, who aren't getting the best tutors, who aren't getting the best funding. And I think that it is great and all that there are certain programs that are specialized to help the advancement of African American people, but we can't get lost and think that, okay, think about it. At large, they might be helping 10 people, thousands of African Americans who aren't getting that funding and are dropping out. And so we have to make sure that just because we benefit doesn't mean that the system is working well. What it means is that they're giving to those voices that they hear, but they're not giving to those who don't have the voice to speak for themselves because of the lack of education, because of the lack of proximity. So being from the suburbs, I can have my voice being heard because I live among people that are not of my skin tone, but I'm going to make my voice be heard. I might have to be the angry Black person in that moment, But one thing I am going to make sure is that my voice is getting heard and that I'm getting taken care of. And I think that, but that also takes, and that's why this podcast is so important, is I feel as though this is where I can use where I've had, privilege in one sense, but also come here and be in an open session and say, yes, I've had privilege, but I'm also willing to push for other African Americans to, actually kick and get into that door that I got into, but also to make sure that we're dismantling the system at the same time, that we're like, thank you for this scholarship. Thank you for this opportunity. But I also have brothers, and you can't just take one handout and just be happy with it because it's not enough.
Snap it up. Snap it up to that.
Yeah.
That was so good. And that was just a little preview of the types of discussions that we're going to be having on this podcast. And we're going to have a more in-depth discussion about reclaiming your image and reclaiming the imagery of BIPOC and LGBTQ people. So I don't want to get too much into that, but that was just a little preview for you. This is how our podcasts are going to be going. We're going to, give a little recap if we have any other last words on the previous topic, and then we're going to dive into our next topic. We also want to make sure that everyone who's listening knows that this isn't just me and she picking all the topics or us and the guest speaker picking the topics. Like, yes, there will be a little bit of that, but we also want you guys to pick the topics as well. If you feel like there's some subject matter that isn't spoken on a lot and you feel like we need to touch on it or it needs to be more awareness needs to be raised about it, we want you to write us at our page at This Is Black Focus. We're going to have stories where we allow for people to interact and tell us what they want to hear about. But if we don't have one of those posts, we want you to comment. We want you to DM us at This Is Black Focus what your ideas are. If you don't feel like we're touching on the Nigerian protests that are happening right now, we want you to tell us that so we can talk about it more, right? If you don't think that we're talking about Belarus enough and what's going on over there, then we need to talk about that. And if you haven't heard about any of those instances, then that's something that needs to be talked about. We need to make sure that we're talking about everything that's going on right now and making sure that everyone feels like they have a place where they're being seen.
So our next topic is going to be transformative justice, the police federation, and reimagining the police budget. And so I would encourage you, so this is a call to action from she. I think that you should all look up these terms and get ready for the open discussion. I'm not saying that you need to go write a paper. I'm not saying that you need to go, research them heavy, because obviously we're going to do that for you. But I want you to be able to know the words and them not just be buzzwords. Take what we talk about and put that in your everyday discussions and make some of these words part of a new you. And I think that the best way to do that is with people that love and care for you. And even though we can't see you, just because you're here listening, I love the fact that you're actively trying to change and push yourself to a better person.
Yeah, so I agree 100%. Obviously, like she said, you don't have to research the topics, but it'll make it a more engaging conversation if you do, especially if you're listening with other people. Please listen with other people. Put your friends on, because we're going to be talking about some hot things up in the Black Focus discussion, okay? And as we have said a multitude of times during this entire talk, please submit any other topics that you believe should be talked about. So yes, we're talking about transformative justice and the police federation, reimagining the police budget next week. But then the week after that, hopefully we're going to have a guest speaker. We're going to talk about queerness. We're going to talk about gendered movements and the exclusion of different groups of people. We're going to have brilliant academics and scholars come on to the podcast. I'm so excited because I love these people. They're going to be great. They're going to do a great job. They have educated me so much, and they have built the foundation for me to move forward in my academic career. So I want to put y'all on to the same resources that I had, even if it's just a little sampling, right? As we said at the beginning, this is Black Focus, an open discussion
where we aim to educate the masses, address social issues, and liberate the exploited through research.
Thank you for joining This is Black Focus for another open discussion.
We hope you enjoyed today's dialogue and encourage you to engage in the conversation by following our Instagram at This Is Black Focus and our Twitter at We Are Black Focus. Here you will find updates for future podcast conversations and even be able to give input on what they are. For business inquiries, feel free to email us at blackfocuscollective@gmail.com and tune in every week for a new episode.